What's the good word, y'all? It's your boy DKB here. I want to update you guys on the Haason Reddick situation because at this point, we've reached the period where I start having serious doubts, serious concerns. I told you guys it would be around the time we had that first joint practice, first preseason game. That has come and gone. And then, of course, Zack Rosenblatt on the Can't Wait I don't think it's the Cool Your Jets, but the Can't Wait podcast happened to give his thoughts, and he thinks that this could be something that bleeds into the regular season. I mean, this is the closest thing to a Steelers Le'Veon Bell situation that the NFL has seen in quite some time, right? Even all the other crazy stuff like CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase going on, those are relatively peaceful. They're showing up to camp, they're just not practicing, and there's more so the ownership side of trying to figure out what's happening, right? From the Jets' perspective, this kind of been a crap storm from the beginning, right? You trade for a guy that wants a contract. Plenty of teams have done that. It is what it is. The general understanding is that when things go smoothly, there's been a framework discussed. There might just be some minutia that needs to get refined, right? Maybe what the pay schedule is, maybe what the final guarantees will look like, incentives, et cetera, right? But in this case, that doesn't seem to be the case whatsoever, and we really have no idea. There's a ton of speculation. All we really have to rely on is whatever these Jet leaks are, and then guys like Zack Rosenblatt doing coverage, and Diana Rossini, whoever else wants to throw their hat in the ring. The only thing we've heard from Haason Reddick up until this point is a tweet that, he mentioned something along the lines of don't believe everything that you're seeing out there in the media and tweets, et cetera, right? So no real kind of clarification on what the problem is. And the best that I understand it right now is that the Jets had some kind of brief conversation, right? Because you still have to avoid tampering. But essentially a understanding that the Jets didn't want to entertain a multi-year contract until they got to see him on the field, see how he's embraced the culture, help to redefine this defense, if he can be that elite X factor in terms of coming off the edge, and then it would be entertained. Otherwise, they will stick to the 1 year, and after the season is over, we can discuss further if this could be a longer-term partnership. At some point, that didn't happen, and so now we're here, right? And where we're at right now is Haason Reddick going on about 3 to 4 weeks, let's just call it a month's plus worth of holdouts, right? $50,000 fines a day. I believe he's somewhere in the ballpark of $1 million plus right now in fines. And per the CBA, these are mandatory, so it's not like something the Jets are discussing not giving or wanting to give. And the other piece is non-refundable, or it can't be reimbursed, whatever terminology you want to use. So the interesting piece to this whole thing is that I look at this as a pretty black and white situation. Haason Reddick is only willing to settle for a multi-year contract, and the Jets are only willing to settle for a 1-year deal. Now, there's things that they're willing to do around that, right? A lot of the conversations I've heard is that they're willing to rework the contract to offer guarantees, maybe even fully guarantee, even sweeten the pot with some performance-based incentives. But that's essentially it. It's a 1 year. Let's see what's happening on the field. From Haason Reddick's standpoint, he essentially has to be able to walk away with the multi-year deal now because the financials just don't make sense. He's getting fined at the moment after missing his preseason game, regular season game checks to the tune of about $800,000, right? I think it's a couple thousands difference based on his actual contract, but let's just go with that ballpark number. So if he misses the entire preseason, that's $2.4 million gone right there. Add in the million plus that's already going on. You're talking about 3.4-ish million. Could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less, but let's just ballpark it at $4 million. You're essentially risking a third of your check, which he's making $14.25 million this year, non-guaranteed. You're essentially forfeiting, let's call it that $4.25 million number. And for what? If you get a longer term extension, this doesn't really do anything for you, right? You're kind of back where you started with. You probably ultimately land around the same figure, $14.25 million. And so ultimately, if he has to settle for a 1 year deal, it's it was all for naught, right? At this point, he just took a extremely long vacation, and he's trying to hop back in, and hopefully, riding a bike is just muscle memory, as they say. At this point, there's not even any guarantee that, and Salah's spoken about this, he's one of those players that can just jump back into the fix and look like the same player that he's always been. Le'Veon Bell was a guy that many people thought he's had a ton of wear and tear from the Steelers. The year off actually is probably a plus for him, and he came back and it never really worked. Jets being the Jets, we obviously helped in screwing that up, but still, just to give I feel like an apples to apples comparison on what's really happening here. And at this point, this could definitely bleed into the regular season. And if this does, I think there's a very realistic chance that Haason Reddick just gets shut down for the year. I think, if I understood this correctly, that once the regular season actually kicks off, and maybe after he misses the first game or something along those lines, they can actually just nullify his entire contract for the year. As we know, he's not going to accrue a year that leads towards him entering free agency. So now you're just permanently tied to the Jets. So the real question is Haason Reddick willing to risk having to retire early, losing an entire year's worth of check, as opposed to just taking whatever's on the table from the Jets? And I'm not saying that the Jets want to screw him over, but that's essentially where we're at. It's looking like retirement or nothing for Haason Reddick, because I don't know how the full background contract stuff works, but I assume his rights just remain ours until at some point he acknowledges he wants to return, and then we have the right of refusal, or however that whole process works, right? I think it would be essentially similar to what happened to Andrew Luck with the Colts. There was plenty of opportunities for teams reaching out to him, wanting him to return, and if so, the Colts still essentially owned his contract. So that's where we're at. The good news, I will say, is that the Jets defense, in my opinion, has looked really, really well. Obviously, Haason Reddick is a proven product. If he goes out there, you're expecting him to be able to go out there and wreck games, much like Bryce Huff did. But he's more consistent, again, more proven, closer, all the accolades that made the original trade sound perfect. And to be honest, I don't really give Joe Douglas much slack here either, because on the surface level sounds good. Yes, you understand this guy would have probably had a holdout with the Eagles anyways over his contract as well, but it seemed like one of those slide moves Joe Douglas would have been able to get away with, stealing a proven top-tier guy at his position, probably doesn't have to offer a long-term contract with a recoup comp picks, etc., etc., etc. All the stuff in between gets a little muddier, and you can fault them for maybe something with the negotiations, but it is what it is. All of this reality TV drama isn't necessarily where I like to focus my attention anyways, but I do think I do think this is particularly interesting to see how it plays out, where the Jets could, I guess the other final option would be the trades, right? Trading somebody that you traded to acquire, and it would have to be a fire sale, pennies on the dollar, which we know Joe Douglas most likely won't do. Maybe he can flip it for a player-for-player type situation. But let's see how this ultimately plays out. Let me know where you guys are at with this, though. Maybe you've dug up something else that I haven't been able to find out here, or just let me know your thoughts in general. Where are you at with it? I'm kind of sick of having to think about this in the back of my mind anyway, so I wouldn't. It is what it is. Joe Douglas hasn't lost many trades. If a trade gets us out of this situation and we can still get another player or some kind of asset to help us out, let it be. I'm comfortable with the defensive line and what we can potentially churn out over the long term of the season. But again, let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you again. Peace.